Hi, my name is Angela Harris, and I'm the host of Third Ed Spotlight. Today, I am pleased to have with me as a guest, Kelly Babb, who is a corporate recruiter at Kavaliro. Kelly, how are you?
Hi, Angela. I'm so glad we set up this time to get together.
Same here, same here. So looking forward to our conversation. Let me ask you, if you could just let everybody know what you do as a corporate recruiter.
Sure.
And how you were attracted to the quote unquote staffing industry.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you set me up for that. Perfect. So first, actually, let me tell you a little bit about Kavaliro. Kavaliro is an IT and staffing solutions organization. So we essentially solve problems for our clients. Sometimes that's in a way where we're going to handle an entire project, an implementation or an installation, a migration of a certain software, or sometimes that's going to be on the staffing side of things where they need one or two different hires for either a contract placement or a direct hire placement. So we really support our clients in a lot of different ways. We have a heavy focus on IT, government work, engineering, accounting and finance, some marketing, mainly professional roles. With a strong emphasis in information technology type positions. So when I joined Kavaliro, I joined as a technical recruiter, which means I spent all day long trying to find candidates within IT positions. So everything from software developers to network engineers to help desk technicians, a whole variety of different positions. Worked that for a couple of years. And then moved into the corporate side of Kavaliro as our organization grew from a small company to a mid-sized company. And now in an operational role, I handle all of our internal hiring. So actually recruit recruiters usually is the type of positions I'm hiring for, and then teaching them how to do it. And I think you asked what drew me to that. And for me, it's always been about people. I love building relationships with people, communicating with people. I love learning about new things, and being able to recruit within the technology industry was extremely new for me, and I didn't know anything about it. And I loved having the opportunity, I still do, where every phone call I make, I'm learning something new, either about how a company works or types of projects people are working on. It's all really fascinating to me to see, what it takes to make the world go round.
No, I like that. That's amazing. And just as you were talking about Kavaliro,
yeah.
If you could just help us understand the footprint that Kavaliro has in terms of its locations here in the US and worldwide, if any.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kavaliro is a national brand with international reach. We have a handful of different divisions, as I mentioned. Our staff augmentation division is just one portion of what we offer. We also have a Salesforce practice, a managed service provider, and a professional solutions division that all kind of, as I mentioned, I'm oversimplifying it, but as I mentioned before, really just solves problems for our clients. We have location, well, we're headquartered in Orlando, Florida, which is where I am from. It's where I live. We also have locations in Jacksonville, Atlanta, Charlotte, Northern California, just north of San Francisco in beautiful Petaluma. And then we also have people working remotely all over the country as our internal team, and then consultants, several hundred consultants on client sites across the country as well.
No, that's great. That's great. So thank you for that background.
Sure.
And while we're talking about Kavaliro and sort of the staffing industry, how does an organization go about working with a recruitment firm? So whether that's Kavaliro or another firm, similar firm in the space, what does that process look like?
Well, the first thing I want to kind of explain about recruiting or staffing, or however you want to call it, is that there are recruiters that are inside within companies that hire directly for the company. Sometimes it's called talent acquisition, and that's if you talk to a recruiter, for example, from Deloitte, a really large organization. They have an internal team of talent acquisition, and they could talk to you directly about a job with them. When companies like Deloitte or any company, large or small, decides that they need additional help or that they need to rev up a team a lot faster, they'll use outside vendors. Kavaliro is a great example of an outside vendor that can provide this staffing solution that they need, whether it's on a project oriented basis or a little bit more of that headhunter, which is not our favorite word, but a little more of the headhunter style if they just need one very specific high level placement that needs to be made. It's always going to be the company that pays the outside vendor or the staffing firm, the organization. So the reason that's important to understand is that most outside firms, most outside staffing firms, their customer is the company. And so they're kind of at the mercy of whatever roles that company is going to end up having available. Now, what that company is hiring us to do is to find the best talent that we possibly can. So the best recruiters are going to be the ones that have really built up relationships with candidates. And that's where the difference is between working with an individual, working as an individual with a recruiter, and then working as a company with a recruiter. If you're the company, you're getting what you, the people that you need from the recruiter. And if you're a candidate, you're going to be basically getting access through the recruiter to different opportunities, maybe that you wouldn't have normally have access to, either because it's going through a vendor relationship or they have an exclusive on being able to work on it. They also can, a recruiter can bring you a little bit more information about the role that you might not have gotten if you just looked it up on a website, or they have a personal relationship with the hiring manager, or they have, you know, some details that they can help guide you through the process a little bit more. So obviously with companies being our clients, they're the one who pays the bills, which also means that working with a recruiter should never cost a candidate any money. And in fact, it should hopefully get them paid more money, because that's kind of how it works. We're trying to represent our candidates and making sure we're getting them the best possible pay structure that the company can allow.
No, thank you for that. So if I'm a candidate, for example, and let's say I am looking for a job, how would I go about establishing a relationship with a recruitment firm?
That's a really great question. And the tough part about it is there's no one direct answer. Every firm kind of works a little bit differently. And I'm actually going to back it up. Before you decide to work with a recruiter, before you even start to look for a job, you have to make sure that you're really ready. And the first thing you have to do to be ready is to have a resume or a portfolio, or even a LinkedIn or an Indeed profile put together that's listing all of your past work experience, any skills that you might have, any certifications that you have, additional training, your volunteering, all the traditional stuff you'd put on a resume. A lot of everything has moved virtual now, so you could probably be fine to have just an Indeed profile or a LinkedIn profile. But before you can start talking to any employers or recruiters, you got to have that stuff ready. So once you have that ready, that's when it's about sharing the information as much as you possibly can. So posting your resume on any sort of public job boards like monster.com, careerbuilder.com. There's one specific to IT called Dice. There are a lot of different what we would call job boards out there that you can apply to jobs. Once you start to put your resume into those websites, they're collecting that into a large database, and then recruiters on the staffing side can gain access to those and kind of run their searches, and you can start having recruiters reach out to you. If you're actively trying to get in touch with a recruiter, best thing you can do is jump on LinkedIn and look up recruiters on LinkedIn and start messaging them and say, hey, this is the position I'm kind of looking for. I don't know if this is something you work on. If it's not, can you point me in the right direction? Just start building personal relationships with people who have the recruiter title. Sometimes they won't answer. Sometimes if they're, they're busy and they don't have a position that's relevant to you, you're not always gonna, message the right person, and that's okay. They can either pass it off to you or eventually someone will respond, and then you're well on your way to building out a relationship.
No, that's awesome. I feel like we're getting sort of this inside scoop, because a lot of times when you think about building relationships with a recruitment firm or trying to get a job, there's an active stance, but never have I had someone articulated in the way that you have, that you can be proactive on LinkedIn and reaching out, and you actually could get feedback. And so I think that insight is very helpful. So thank you for sharing that, because I think people think it's just passive. Like you mentioned, posting on job boards and just kind of waiting, but that you can be a little bit more proactive, particularly if you know a firm has a particular specialization.
Exactly.
And you can reach out to a recruiter if you think there might be a fit with something that they're doing or the clientele that they service.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just like anything in your life. If you sit around and wait for it, it might come eventually. But the smarter moves that you make about doing your own research, reaching out to people who might be able to help you. And I'll probably talk about this a little bit more later on once we get into the reskilling portion of what we want to talk about. But it's really important not just sit back and let things happen to you, but to try to respectfully and proactively make things happen.
No, I agree. That's great. That's great. So as a corporate recruiter, you do have this special lens as we move into the job market. So right now, we're at the beginning of 2021.
Right.
We are in a recession, a pandemic, and we have record unemployment in a lot of states in the United States. And so I would like for you to share with us like what you're seeing in terms of demand, like what roles, what fields are basically your clients, your customers on the corporate side, the organizational side, who's hiring and who isn't hiring right now?
Well, a couple of things I want to keep in mind here as just a little bit of a preface is that a majority of what my organization focuses on is IT focused. So when it comes to healthcare, which is a huge need and will continue to be a huge need, just because I'm not talking about it doesn't mean it's not a big item. And especially in some of the research that I've done and seen, healthcare is going to continue to be a need. So I always want to start with that. Healthcare is a huge portion of it. I'm just not the expert on it, so you're not going to hear as much of it from me. Our focus being on information technology and engineering, that's of course what we're seeing a lot of. Something I want people to think about is that if everything that's happened in 2020, so this year prior, the companies that were able to retain their staff and were able to find a way to adapt and push forward, the biggest adaptation they had to deal with was going remote, going virtual. And all of that, from the Zoom call that we're doing right now to the headphones that I'm using to do this call, to the video editing tool that you're going to use. Sometimes this is the first time any company is using any of these tools. And that's just the simple stuff with the video calls and things like that. When you start to think about how do I share private documents? How do I share health information that's in a HIPAA compliant? How do I do all those things? Everything that required us to move virtual is going to require a lot of support. So a majority of what we're seeing is a lot of support for all the tools that have moved us virtual, including even, not to get too deep into IT stuff here, but any sort of storage of data, physical data, and then the data that we'll have online in the cloud, all that stuff has to be updated as well, and making sure that everything is locked down, compliant, safe, being kept. And then the processes of making sure that everything we used to do in hand can now be done virtually. So we're seeing a lot of positions supporting those types of moves at a high level and even a lower level on like a customer service basis. We're seeing a lot of things around that.
No, that's awesome. So I was going to say, given that basically there are these wraparound services to support remote work, what opportunities are you seeing other than customer service for lower level employees, let's say?
Yes, it's tough because, and not to kind of jump ahead here, but one of the challenges that every company is facing is the skill gap between what is needed and supported versus what unemployed candidates are able to bring to the table, not because they're not smart enough, but because they just haven't been exposed to it yet. So we are seeing a lot of customer service positions, any sort of data management type role, any sort of coordinating or project management type role. We're seeing more and more need for the support of those types of positions.
No, that's great. I like that you sort of mentioned those because, as you know, we do a lot with digital literacy and
Right.
helping trainers train the trainer, whether they
Yeah.
be social workers or educators,
Yeah.
sort of upskill and reskill individuals.
Right.
So I want to ask you, since we're in this space, and you're seeing, you have sort of this front row view to what's going on in the front lines. What are the top 3 digital literacy skills are you seeing that are really coming into play right now?
All right. So I thought about this because I could list a million different softwares and technology tools that I think would be really relevant, but truly understanding Microsoft Outlook,
Mm.
the email system and the calendaring system, understanding that, understanding how to use Excel, because Excel is pretty much used universally everywhere. And then this is the third one is kind of a cheat, but I think it's true. I think you need to know how to use social media. And I'm not just talking like knowing how to like Snapchat your friends or post a picture on Instagram, but how to truly network with people online. And that's more what I'm leading into with social media, how to build out a profile on LinkedIn, how to connect with people, how to build meaningful conversations and friendships and professional relationships, not in person, because I mean, that's already been a very important thing, but it's going to continue to be an important thing pushing forward, no matter what type of a position you're in. It's going to help you get jobs. It's going to help you get jobs in the future. It's going to help you refer your friends to different jobs. I think having those social networking skills are vital, and sort of translate across any industry you could possibly want to get into.
Wow, that's excellent advice there. I love that because we're all sort of having to pivot a little and do more with social media, do more. Excel and Outlook email software programs have been around for a while, but when we think about social media, that seems to be something that seems like it's going to continue in the future. I mean, would you sort of agree with that, or are you seeing something that might think that there could be something else in terms of emerging technologies that could really come into play in terms of those basic general skills that could be helpful in any sector?
I mean, here's the thing, email slash messaging, calendaring, data management, which is really what Excel is. Building out spreadsheets is just the management of data and manipulation of numbers. And knowing how to communicate virtually. I mean, you take out Outlook, Excel, and Facebook and put in any other 3 technologies, no matter how it evolves. That's at the core of what technology is those 3 main items, making sure that you can handle that. So yeah, do I think things are going to change in the future? Of course, but I think there's always going to remain an element of each part of that, the email and messaging and calendaring. I mean, when I say calendaring, I mean like knowing how to schedule and coordinate, which sounds like a silly task, but it's very important. And especially if you are coming in more entry level into a larger organization, a lot of the tasks that you're going to be given are going to be secretarial in nature, coordinating, planning, things like that. And while you learn whatever skill set it is that you're being exposed to. So the manipulation, sorry, couldn't get that word out, of numbers and data that you do in spreadsheets, like within Excel or any other spreadsheet type technology product that you're using. And then the social element of technology in any form of social media, that stuff 20 years from now will still be very vital. I mean, it was vital 20 years ago and 40 years ago as well, just in different ways. That will always remain.
No, I appreciate you underscoring that point. I think that's really helpful. And then too, you just to sort of unpack something that you mentioned, I don't want to gloss over this point, but I thought you made a really key point about that basically communicating online, communicating virtually, and just how is communicating virtually different or similar to communicating face to face?
So it depends on if you get video or not. So we'll start with not video.
Okay.
Email etiquette, any sort of written etiquette is going to be extremely important, because if you're straight and direct to the point, sometimes if they can't hear the intonation in your voice, you could be saying something very lightheartedly and it could come across as very rude. And so you have to build in some language to set the tone, make sure that they know if you're joking, if you're not. I mean, thank goodness for emojis. I think they're very helpful when used sparingly, but I do think that they're very helpful. I think, you know, knowing how to bring the tone into whatever communications you have, bringing respect into whatever communications you have, whether it's for a job you want to get or a coworker that you've known for a long time, trying to send condolences to someone that works across the country from you. If they, you know, posted about the loss of a family member or some other struggle that they might be going through, you want to make sure that you can touch that tone just through your words. Not an easy skill, but an important one nonetheless. Now, if you have video, there are a lot of things that we've all had to do. I mean, Angela, you and I have had a few video conversations, and we've talked a little bit about, you know, making sure that you have a background that is clear of distractions, making sure the noise around you is at a minimum so that you're not distracted, making sure there's light on your face so that we're not completely darkened out and you can't see when I smile or when I'm looking away, even making sure I'm paying attention to the camera that's in front of me when I'm on a meeting. I can't tell you how many interviews, unfortunately, I've been a part of where people didn't have some of those basic skills. And sometimes it's just as simple as practicing with your friend or your partner or even your child. Your child is probably the best person to know how to use some of the tools that they're more used to using than we might be. So I think having a command of how you're being perceived is extremely important, even more so when we're separated by whether it's 6 feet or a country away.
No, I like that you were mentioning that. I think we as educators and whether counselors or social workers or workforce development agents,
Sure.
You think about, like, we used to do mock interviews.
Yeah.
So maybe now the thing is to do sort of these mock Zoom meetings and Zoom calls so that people can be more aware of how they come across.
Yes.
And I think that could be maybe something that's helpful. As I hear you mentioning, I think these very important basically protocols now for communicating. So you said written communication and then basically how you're coming across in video, which could impact whether or not you get hired, right? By a hiring manager or a recruiting officer.
Yeah, I mean, it could definitely impact it, but I want you to look at it on the other way. I don't want it to impact it, right? You want your experience and your eagerness and your dedication, your passion. You want that to come through, not the fact that maybe you accidentally have your video set up like this because you weren't prepared, or there's, you know, dogs barking in the background over and over again. We don't want them to think about that at all. We want them to think about what you're saying.
Well taken. Definitely to heed that. We hope, but we don't know, because we don't know how everybody is viewing an individual candidate.
Right.
So I get what you're saying. I understand where you're coming from, because you want the skill set and the experience to basically be the shining pieces of someone's presentation.
Exactly.
Well, great. So we've been talking a little bit about sort of technology, and we hear a lot when we talk about emerging technologies and the automation of work, sort of this robots versus humans. And I know you have some strong feelings about that. So if you could just help us unpack, like, what does the future look like in terms of the automation of work from the lens that you're seeing it?
So I'm going to speak very specifically about the industry that I'm in, because I think it serves as a really strong example. And hopefully I'm not kind of like jumping ahead too much here, but let's think about your resume. So Angela, let's say you put together your PDF version of your resume and you upload it, you applied to a job on Indeed, and everything that you've been reading says, put a whole bunch of keywords into your resume, because that's how the algorithm is going to make you show up, and it's going to help you like beat the system, fight the machine, and your resume with all the dotted keywords on it is going to show up first. I want to say that is important, but at the end of the day, no one ever got hired because the machine picked their resume. I think all the technology tools will try to tell you that they can do it better than a human, but they just can't. You're going to have a human review your resume. You're going to have to do an interview, at least one, if not over the phone or in person, then over video. There's always going to be a human element of that, partially to fight off anyone who just randomly put keywords. And of course, Angela wouldn't do that. Angela has a lot of qualifications herself that would catch the attention. Also, a machine can't understand the relevance of, for example, Kavaliro is a huge University of Central Florida supporter. We love our Knights, go Knights. And we love finding people with a background from UCF. It's located in Orlando. I can see it from my office. It's really many of the people that work for us are alumni. So those are kind of the soft things that a machine's never going to be able to pick up on. That's the stuff that's relevant only to a human. So I do think that automation is definitely, it's here. It's part of the future, whether you call that artificial intelligence or machines just making us do jobs faster. But at risk of oversimplifying it, you still need a human to run the machine and you still need a human to double check. And so there will always be jobs to support it. It's just knowing the technology or the software product or even the processes in place to make that automation work. Things will just continue to go faster, but with the help of both machine and human.
Well, that's reassuring. It's nice to know that we as humans will still have a role to play, but really it's more understanding sort of the technology really as a tool. And so humans will need to know how to use these tools to make offices, companies, organizations more efficient.
Yes, absolutely.
No, awesome. So I want to just touch on, before we sort of close out, we are, as I mentioned, this backdrop of, and hopefully we are coming out of the pandemic as vaccines are being administered. But are there any silver linings that you see in terms of the job market going forward, so 2021 and beyond, that people can sort of look forward to or at least prepare for in terms of opportunities?
I truly believe that the silver lining in all of this, and again, I'm partial to technology,
right?
But the fact that the internet is not only much more accessible here in the United States to most people, but is so full of information that is open source or free. There is so much opportunity to self-teach. And I'm not saying that schools will be replaced, universities will be replaced, or great teachers will ever be replaced. I strongly believe they won't. However, I think the quote goes, I know of no better or no more encouraging fact than man's ability to lift himself up. So I think that having this opportunity to learn about new things, to read about new things, if you read an article and you see a word you don't know, you can go look it up and then rent a book on it for free from the library. I mean, there's so many ways that you can build upon the things that interest you or the things that you need to build up within yourself in order to become a better candidate for whatever job path it is that you're trying to seek. I do think that is the silver lining of this. And because so many people, unfortunately, were put in some sort of displaced position because things changed through the pandemic, that they do have the opportunity to adapt to some extent. And I don't think we really got to chat about it much, but people coming from the retail industry where things are changed, you're not in person as much anymore, or people coming from hospitality where things have changed, people aren't coming in person as much anymore. A lot of those skills can be pivoted and you can utilize a lot of the people skills that you might have had and focus it in on a lot of other different paths as we try to support this new way of life. Because that's all people skills is, really just supporting other people, whether you're bringing explaining a menu and bringing a plate of food to a person, or learning about a new software product that is being installed in a very large company and helping with level 1 tech support. You still have to learn the menu, you still have to learn the software. It's just about what can you take yourself and grow and learn and then bring to what you're executing at work.
I love your emphasis on people skills. And I think that is definitely sort of, I hope, a takeaway that people will sort of bear in terms of okay, maybe I was in one of those sectors that was decimated by what's gone on in the past year, but there are transferable skills that can be applied to another sector. And certainly your people skills, I think you're right, will certainly come into play.
Definitely.
Which is great. Yeah. So let me ask you this. So we promote education and lifelong learning. What are you doing now to support or to further your own learning?
So a couple different things. On a professional standpoint, every week our company has a time set aside every Thursday at 11:30 where we do some kind of a training. So sometimes it's on a soft skill, sometimes it's about the company, sometimes it's about the industry or a specific technology, and we kind of take turns having the opportunity to teach each other and support each other. So we're always doing that as an organization. On a personal level, like I've been challenging myself to read 2 books a month, which doesn't sound like very much, but it is for me. And I love listening to books and podcasts. So I have Audible and they get all of my money. And so I try to do 1 fiction and 1 nonfiction a book every month is definitely what I'm trying to doing. And then walking is very therapeutic for me. It's kind of like a time to meditate and also exercise. So I have an Apple Watch and I close my rings every day. You have to do 30 minutes of exercise. And so every single day I walk at least 30 minutes as part of just sort of like a regenerative task that definitely helps get my mind in the right place and make sure my day starts off right.
Wow, I think that's awesome.
Yeah,
I think that will sort of be an inspiration to a lot of people, and the fact that you mentioned different things. And I think a lot of times people think about when you're furthering your own knowledge, it always has to be a book. But you mentioned podcast. Now we have Audible, and I've been doing, audiobooks as well. I love it.
Well, the audiobooks help so much because if you're driving or whatever your commute is to get someplace that you're going, or I like to do it when I'm cleaning because it makes it go faster, but it's also, you know, a little bit easier. And then obviously when I walk, that's a big thing for me. So.
No, I think that's excellent. Great, great. So let me ask you, Kelly, if people want to connect with you or learn more about Kavaliro, what's the best way to do that?
Well, we have an excellent website. So kavaliro.com, Kavaliro. I'm sure you'll put a lovely little link or something.
We'll put a link there. Yes.
Sure. Wonderful. And then LinkedIn is where I live, basically. So find me on LinkedIn and reach out and connect. You can add me as a connection and then message me right then and there. And I usually try to be pretty active, and you know, I'm happy to. We have a lot going on, but I'm happy to try and help out when I can, and definitely, you know, give advice where needed. And you know, there's a lot of services that Kavaliro offers as well. So I'm happy to speak on those or connect anybody interested with the right people as well. I did want to mention an aside though, all of the positions that Kavaliro supports with our outside clients, they're all listed on our website as well. So we have like a live job board ourselves, and I would definitely encourage anybody to go check out on there and see what we might have in their area, what might be remote, to see if there's any positions that they would want to apply for.
No, awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
I have found this talk so inspirational and uplifting in terms of, you know, I think a lot of people sort of are looking at everything that's going wrong right now, but certainly there's definitely a reason to be optimistic if you are underemployed or unemployed. And I think something that you mentioned is that basically there is support, whether you take upon learning for yourself or you are more into social media and access some of the resources like that are on LinkedIn or some of the free resources that are there. Yeah. So you have brought to light so many things that I think serve to give a reason for optimism in 2021 going forward. So I want to thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
I want I thank you for joining me. This has been just a wonderful, enlightening conversation, and you've given us some inside information that I think you don't always get when you think about the recruiting process or what happens, and ways that you can be more proactive. So I just want to thank you for joining me today and just sharing your wisdom.
My total pleasure. And if I can just leave us with like an overarching thought,
Yes.
really the optimism is something that you get to choose for yourself, right? And we all get to choose for ourselves. So there are certainly situations where we can feel really beat down or feel like the world's working against us. It's been an incredibly challenging year for many people, myself included. But you get to control your attitude, especially when you can't control anything else around you. So there's always opportunity. There's always, to take your words, there's always a silver lining. And it's really up to you as an individual on how you want to maintain that and what you want to bring each day, and what you put into it. So it's exciting. I think there's a lot of growth to happen this year. I mean, a lot of opportunity for betterment in a lot of different ways. So Angela, thank you so much. I think it's really wonderful, the content that you're providing. And I'm happy to speak with you and anyone involved with the organization at any time. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you again. And I think that's an excellent note to close off on. So Kelly Babb, corporate recruiter at Kavaliro, thank you. And you continue to stay healthy and stay well in 2021.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. You too.